Well, hello everybody. Well, here we are. We are going to talk about Trey appearing on Marc Maron's podcast, and I have gotten down. I thought I was just like, oh, I'll jot down some notes while they're talking here, and I'm listening, and then I ended up with like an entire page of notes, almost top to bottom, edge to edge. It's like a Donato's pizza over here of notes. So then I was like, all right, maybe I should break this down and kind of summarize this a little bit. Then I thought, well, you know what? Maybe I'll just go blow for blow. And I liked the fact that it was very much a conversation. It was just like these two guys were sitting down having a conversation, and somebody snuck a recorder in. It wasn't really an interview. There were a few times when I wish Mark would have stopped and treated it more like an interview. But overall, it was really cool to just to sit in on a conversation between these two, and it started out strong. Marc Maron, going right to my heart by saying, "Look, I was a Grateful Dead fan, but I wasn't like real into them to the point to where like when they played drums in space, I would like hit skip or go to the bathroom if he was at the show." I was like, all right, that's my kind of guy. And he talked a little bit about why he never had Trey on. He said he just wasn't a Phish fan. He had never heard their music and just felt like it would be a little bit insulting to have Trey on and not know anything about the guy. So, which kind of showed the fact that this was not Trey's first attempt. He did mention that Trey was pitched to him. He didn't go searching out Trey. So it sounded like several times Trey tried to get on. And then he also talked about how he's mentioned several times recently, like he's kind of happy and glad that Phish has always been off the mainstream and they've kind of went under the radar and they've been very successful, but yet very low key. But I only think that's sort of recently he feels that way because it pops up. It's the head of that ugly head pops up here a few times. A little bit of bitter Trey throwing some shade at like Lollapalooza, for example, and the fact that he's tried to get on a very popular podcast multiple times. So how low-key are you trying to be there, Mr. Andy Pasta? Which, look, I understand. They've had a very talented, successful band for 40-plus years now. You kind of wish at some point people would pay attention. He's like, back all the way back to the Bittersweet Motel movie. He was a little bit like, hey, it comes up with Clifford Ball. But all right, let's move on. Not enough about that. Like I said, Trey does like being low-key more now. More now. Oh, the hair comes from northern Italy. I believe it was his his father's side of the family, his grandfather, and maybe even his grandmother, both were from northern Italy. But then he goes on to say that like he's also got Irish in him from his mother's side. So it was like, oh, I thought you were about to drop a bomb on us and be like, the red / orange / I don't know what color hair he's got now. It's like I don't know, man. It's weird. I don't think he's not dyeing it, is he? I think it's just naturally going gray, which is fine, but anyways, it did not come from northern Italy after all. I was so excited there for a moment. I was like, northern Italy? Different kind of ginger, huh? All right. Well, not the case. They glossed over his sister, which I understand. He brought up the fact that he had a younger sister and she passed away, and Mark was like, oh, I'm sorry, and that was it. I kind of wish, though, like maybe if I was interviewing Trey, I would have stopped there. Like I wouldn't have pried too hard, but I would have wanted a moment. Like my dad also had a sister that died when she was young, his younger sister. Also brain-related death. She had a brain aneurysm. And I just know there's like a part of him missing. Like he never got to become like the full man he would have become if he got to spend his whole life with his sister. Or if she didn't just suddenly go, And I'm sure there's something there in Trey. As successful as he's been and as great as he is and as much as we all love him, I'm sure there's just always going to be a hole there that's just like he's not going to be the complete Trey. And we've got a couple of great songs out of such a horrible situation. Okay, great. You gotta have some feelings, all right? Joy's a great song. We love Trey. It's a shame. It's sad. It's horrible, I mean that. There's like we're just not getting the complete Trey. And I would have pried a little bit there, but then who knows, man. The guy was on drugs for a reason, and it wasn't just because, hey, let's party. Hey, I need to get some sleep. It was hard. It was horrible. So let's move on past that now. Then that kind of led to more of a. And Mark said he kind of missed all like they were kind of in the same areas. Like he even did the Vermont comedy scene. He plays like he did comedy at Nectar's and another place, the Front maybe. A couple other places where Phish played, but he was like, yeah, I was just so into becoming a comedian and like trying to make it and get better, and then eventually went out to L.A. and became like hanging out with Sam Kinison, and then that's where the drugs came in. So he just kind of missed all of Phish. Now again, I would have stopped. I would have wanted to ask Trey, like, because Trey was like, yeah, I don't. See, Trey didn't seem to know anything. Trey probably doesn't even know who Sam Kinison is because same way he was like, I would have been like, were you all in on the band at that point? Just like, yeah, I know you had met your eventual wife at the time. Although he said they dated for several years, even before they became a couple, and then went on to get married in '94. I would have liked to have known, like, yeah, were you just so into the band that you just like missed everything? Like, Trey's even a bit of a sports fan. I bet you those years from like '83 to '93, he couldn't tell you anything about sports, any popular movies or shows, just anything. Other music maybe that was going on. Maybe he kept his ears on other music, perhaps. I don't know. We'll start crossing some things off my list here as we go down. So yeah, and then that led to, and then from this point on, the whole conversation kind of led around. And Mark did say, "Look, the reason I came you on is I heard you're a sober guy. I'm a sober guy. I thought, okay, well, that's somewhere where we can connect. While I was never a Phish guy, the sober guy thing can work out." And then he did listen to a little bit of Phish's music. He listened to the first few albums and then a few songs off the new album. He did ask if the new album, like, you being sober and kind of being in recovery, has that led to more? It sounds like maybe a little more spirituality in the music, perhaps. Yeah, fans have been saying that for a while now. There was another point, I'm kind of skipping to the end. There was a good point there at the end when, like, fast forwarding all the way to the gap between '04 and '09 and everything that happened, and then, like, they come back in '09. Marc Maron was like, did the fans know? And Trey kind of chuckled. He was like, oh, yeah, they knew. The fans obviously knew. I mean, we all sat through it in '04. We knew everything. You probably went to some Trey shows in '05. I mean, hell, I was at '05 when Trey was like becoming kind of violent and belligerent towards the fans. He finally had enough of being had glow sticks thrown at him. It got ugly and dark, you know. He was addicted to drugs, the scene just, he couldn't get away from it. We're lucky he's alive. That arrest certainly saved his life, and we should all be grateful for that, which they talked about that later on. But then let's go back to Trey's early time. One of Trey's first deals, he had in middle school, he was like basically in a Deep Purple cover band, and said, sure, I don't know. Nobody in my middle school was in a band. Some people maybe have played instruments, but they certainly weren't in a Deep Purple cover band. And he talked this another point where I was like, maybe ask a few more. Peter Gabriel came up. Maron, not so much of a Peter Gabriel guy. Trey said really it was the tone of his voice and his lyrics. And this was when he was young. This was, teenage/middle school Trey, I suppose. And he was like, yeah, and back then that is kind of all you care about. There was a point in my teenage high school years where I did, yeah, guys like Roger Daltrey and Jim Morrison, they were the guys that who I idolized and was like, yeah, those guys rule. And they were just singers though, man. Come on. I mean, an important part of the band, but so I could see, Trey now maybe would not view Peter Gabriel the same way. Although he talked about Trey going to see Zappa, another thing. This is another unfortunate one where instead of being like, oh, what was that like? Trey said the only time, and I knew Trey had seen Zappa, but he said the only time he had followed a band on tour was he basically followed Frank Zappa's band around on tour. And I don't know if that was in '81. I believe he said it was in '81, I think. And then, some place where a show Trey was at, he was like, oh, did that kind of inspire some of the ways you wrote songs? I hear everything in there, Zappa, King Crimson, all this stuff. And then, like, a particular venue came up, and Mark would be like, oh, yeah, I played comedy there or something. So they never really get to, like, Trey was on Zappa tour. And then, they did talk a little bit about Frank Zappa. Maron seemed to clearly be a Frank Zappa fan as well as Trey, and he was a little bit. Mark kind of answered his own question. He said he didn't like Zappa's humor, which was unusual, I thought. Yeah, that's the first person I've heard say he was a fan, but not really. Most people that don't like Frank Zappa might be like, yeah, I don't get it. His music's a joke, whatever. But he seemed to be a fan, but did not like the humor. But then he said also, maybe, just maybe, Frank was aware that people are so dumb, he needed to kind of like suck them in and just kind of, I don't know, get them to focus on something to then make them realize like what they're doing musically. I don't know. The way he worded it was much more eloquent than what I just said there, whatever the hell I just said there. But so I was a little caught off there, and Trey, I wish would have chimed in a little more. A lot of like, yes from Trey. Trey didn't seem to want to offend anybody, And then like they talked about Clifford Ball. he was very proud of Clifford Ball and everything they had done. But then again, he kind of talked about like, nobody was doing festivals. We did a festival. Everything was great. People had fun. And then shortly after, Lollapalooza comes along, and that's all everybody wants to talk about is Lollapalooza and how great it is. And he was like, it was basically a Jane's Addiction concert with some warm-up acts. Then he called himself and said some very good warm-up acts. But, so, that's what I meant by, like, a little bit of bitter Trey would pop up every now and then. And then, yeah, we talked about Maron did a little bit of the Vermont comedy scene, but yet they missed each other. Trey, like, I think he was like, were you into comedy? And Trey was just like, yeah, no, I was into guitar and the secret language and Gamehenge, man. I was not into comedy. Then Trey mentioned that 92, 93, and 94 were his absolute favorite years of Phish. It felt like a family environment. They had really found their way. And then that kind of led to, and this is where Trey didn't want to, he would step up to the line, but then not really say it, as far as Jerry dying in 95 and the change that brought. And the people that brought. He almost implied, like, gone were the days of, like, we felt pressure, like it was no longer friends and family, sort of. Like maybe some strangers had showed up from Dead Tour, and they're like, hey, we want to do our thing. Like, I think he put it as, like, can you give us the space to do this thing we want to do? And I was like, does he mean jamming? He, like, didn't really say, because the drugs were always there, and, in both scenes. So I don't think he meant that, and I think he meant the jamming. And I think he didn't want to say it, but it was like, yeah, we definitely changed as a band. It kind of, because he was talking about how, like, the whole friend and family, and, like, they'd play these shows, and by the end of the show, there was, like, audience participation, and they were just having a great time, and everything felt like we're all here together. And then how that changed in 95. And then that is when the music changed a little bit. There was less secret language, more jamming, maybe less naming people, calling people out, like, directly by name in the crowd, So that was all very interesting that they talked about that, and that it's also great to hear that 92 through 94 were his favorite years. Not that 95 and 96 were bad or anything, but in that, yeah, he did feel a little pressure from the Dead scene. He didn't quite say it, but then, yeah, he also did a little bit. And then from that point on, it just slowly started to just devolve really into like a really bad drug scene. So many people backstage. They knew, like and they've talked about before, like they probably should have quit after Big Cypress, but they continued to go on. And oh boy, right here in the middle. Oh boy, it's happening again. These rabbits wanted to eat my fresh grass. I gotta do something about this. I cannot. I've been trying all summer with this grass, and this rabbit thinks he's gonna eat it. I got some dead spots already from this little son of a... All right, where the hell were we? Like 5 minutes ago in this video, I started overheating. It gets so hot in this room. I don't know. The registers for the air conditioner suck in here. I got a fan blowing right on me, and then that rabbit, that wascally wabbit. So I think we were somewhere around Trey feeling pressure from the Dead scene, and yeah, he didn't quite. He also was like, was it that, or because it was? And then again, it was connected to drugs and drug use. And, I've heard that from many fans over the years as well, that, that is kind of when it started. And then everybody always wants to use the term, it got darker. And, they find, like, there's never details specifically, though, but they did say, look, like, it went from maybe mushrooms and weed to coke and dope. And, yeah, that's a darker turn, I suppose, just that alone. And then, so they take the break. They finally, Fishman says, like, they were talking, they've talked about how they should have quit after Cypress. Fishman put it in Trey's words that were, they were like on a train going 150 miles an hour and the wall was 5 feet away, and they probably should have stopped right then. But they did not. They booked shows in 2000. They played those shows. And from what I hear from people that were there, I went to one show in 2000. I don't remember. I wasn't really plugged in at all. But that it was obvious. They were just worn out. And they needed a break. And then immediately, as soon as they took the break, Trey could get away from it and could, like he put it, he would like jog and do yoga. And, but it wasn't enough, because as soon as they get back on tour, and he even had said like, hey, look, we're playing these shows at the Garden and then Hampton. Like, if I'm doing drugs at all, just send me straight to rehab. And he was like, yeah, probably 10 minutes into the first show at MSG, someone was like offering him drugs, and then it was just off to the races. And then the early part of '03 wasn't bad. It probably took a while for it to really take its toll. By fall of '03, it was horrible. Early winter. And then, You get a fast forward to Coventry. He said there were three, and he talked a lot along this way because they would come and go with the conversation on what was going on. And fast forwarding all the way to Coventry now, because they took the break, it didn't change much. They had 3,000 people on the guest list at Coventry in '04, and that was just like a party that wasn't all great, you know. Like I don't remember. I just remember now how gross the whole Coventry experience was for a lot of people, and the music not very good, and all of this and that, and Trey's drug use obvious. And then as soon as Phish got off the road, he continues to play, and then it kind of comes to, and he talked to, and then they jump back to Big Cypress, really. And then, or at least here on my notes they did, he talked about how it maybe felt like a big private party, really, in the sense that it was the biggest concert on Earth, the biggest millennial concert on Earth that night, and nobody really cared that much. Now, I do feel like ABC News or something was there that night. You know, they broadcast for a minute or two. So that's something, I suppose. But he's like, that's why it did feel like, hey, just the people that know and like us are here, and the rest of the world doesn't know, even though this is kind of the biggest thing going on a very big New Year's Eve. And more and more about how they tried to stop. Maybe I got a little out of order there, because it's odd that or maybe Mark was a little unaware of the difference between the hiatus and then when they quit in '04, I suppose. And then Trey talked about how they tried to stop. He talked about conversations he had with Chris, CK Chris, about he basically was like, look, it's always been here. Like, everybody has always been partying and using. It's just that when you started doing it publicly, that's when we all like were like, hey, it's like really on now. Which is sort of an unfair thing to put on Trey a little bit. You know, he kind of made it seem like, hey, man, if you're not using, we'll kind of go over here and secretly do it. But if you are going to use, then we're all just going to party and have a good time. So Trey was like, well, I don't want to make everybody uncomfortable, so give me some blow, man. And, you know, then Mark pointed out it kind of seems like you enjoyed using, you were addicted, but you needed like 10,000 people there with you to really do it, because when the shows would end, you could get back to jogging and yoga, you know. And then, yeah, like I mentioned, post-hiatus, it started right back up. Trey was in a weird spot with a lot of that. Yeah, brought that up. They tried, then they do quit again. Yeah, I think I got my notes a little out of order here. And I got a little out of order here, man. This fucking video is going to be longer than the podcast itself. And then the '06 arrest. I'm really fast forwarding here, you know. I'm overheating again. We got the, he's talking about how he was so close to jail and how that, if nothing else, that will help sober you up. The drug court was the greatest thing for him, obviously. Then you get into a little bit more of what almost everybody's familiar with, the comeback in '09 and sober Trey. The other guys, while not like sober in recovery, you know, their partying days are mostly behind them, but yeah, maybe they'll smoke a joint or have a glass of wine or something, maybe throw back a brewski. So that was all in '06, and then at some point, you know, while he's up there, he had to move the whole deal, you know. It really was very much an eye-opener for Trey. And then sober ever since, you know, Mark as well. Mark has more time in than Trey, really. Trey says he looks back at pictures of himself from back then, and he feels like he looks so much older then than he does now. I got bad news for you, Trey. You look a lot older now than you did in 1994. Now, you might not be wearing ridiculous hats and shirts anymore, but you definitely have put on the years, man. It's all right, though. We still all love you. You're doing well. You're healthy. But you don't look younger now, man. What in the fuck are you talking about? And then that guy always spoke very, very highly of Billy Strings, kind of made comparisons to the way Jerry approached his career, and Stevie Ray Vaughan, as far as like Stevie Ray learned everything from like Hendrix to Albert King to B.B. King, and just like thousands of American blues albums. And then he put out this album. And he said, like, you know, same thing with Jerry, and Jerry's dream was to play banjo for Bill Monroe. But he learned and studied and played and listened to all this stuff, and then started the Grateful. And then the Grateful Dead came along with albums and shows. And he kind of says that's where Billy's at right now. And he said he's talked to Billy about that this guy is just like kind of studied and listened to and can play like almost the entire history of American bluegrass music. And then you kind of hear with like Turmoil and Tinfoil, he's just kind of scratching the surface a little bit of what he is going to do and what he's going to become. And then they mentioned a guy, John Bryan, Brion, a producer and songwriter, does a lot of film scores. They said Billy's working with him right now, and they both were like, oh yeah, that sounds really cool. So I don't know. I don't know much about John Bryan. I did quickly look him up and listen to a little bit of his the stuff. It's interesting. We'll see. We'll see what that could lead to. And then talked about Jerry and Jerry's guitars. Talked about Languedoc and who recently, I guess recently, there was a transfer of power with Languedoc guitars. Sounded like Trey was about to say they've already like Paul might make like 8 a year, and it sounded like he's like they're making like 8 a week or something. They're already mass producing this trash. How much he loves his guitar. Told a story about a guy who had maybe when they were out in L.A. getting ready for Fare Thee Well, he had a chance to play one of Jerry's guitars briefly. First he was like, no, I didn't play it. Oh, I played it for a second. All right, I picked it up and played it. The guy started crying. It was Jerry's final guitar that he played on tour, and the guy said it had not even been out of that case since Jerry had died. And I think we'll just leave you on that note. They did talk a little bit about the new album. Very little, though. And then that was it. All right, so this went on way too long, man. I mean, 21 minutes. Sorry. It was great, though. I really enjoyed it, and there was a lot of noteworthy things to write down. I wish I was not interrupted by a bunny and humidity, but this is what we have. All right, guys. Boom. I am out of here. Tour is coming.